Hello everyone and welcome back. So today we're going to talk about um, religion. Religion. Quite an important subject for a lot of people. And I have my own thoughts on this. So first of all, I'm an atheist. Yay. Why am I an atheist? Well, um, I guess I have a somewhat scientific background and I trust in the physical world. So I consider myself a materialist. I don't really believe in anything beyond the physical reality of our universe. Um, but here's the thing. Uh, our universe is pretty crazy and there's an awful lot of stuff out there we don't understand. Um, There's an awful lot we can't see, we can't smell, we can't perceive, and it's still out there. And it seems to me what a lot of people consider spiritual or metaphysical is stuff inside the physical universe that they just don't understand. So, for example, if you demonstrated electricity to an individual from a few hundred years ago, it would seem like magic. And to be honest, even today it seems like magic. Um, I have a basic understanding of physics, so I understand a little bit about ideas of electron flows and electrical potentials. Um, but really, it's this electricity is this amazing flow of energy that we can't really see until it manifests in some work done, like a light or an engine. Um, but it's still quite intangible to us, and it's incredible. It's amazing. It's a force of nature that has a very real effect on our lives, but we don't really have the tools to understand how it works. Uh, and that's just the tip of the iceberg because there's all sorts of crazy stuff out there in this physical universe of ours that we can't really perceive or comprehend with the limited sensors that we are given. There are wavelengths of on the electromagnetic spectrum we can't see but have a very real effect on us. When you put your food in a microwave and it heats up, it's magic, right? It's powered by electricity, and that electricity goes through a machine that produces microwaves that heats your food. Do you understand how that works? I very much doubt it. You might, depending on your level of education and your interests, you might have some understanding on a fairly basic level. But there's probably very few people on the planet, if any, who really understand what's actually happening there. Um, so the physical universe is a weird and wonderful place. And it seems to me that spirituality is attempting to explain the things that we don't yet understand. Okay? And I put religion within the greater category of spirituality. So there are some big unanswered questions in life. What happens when we die? Why do we die? Why do bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people? Why are some people born rich and some people born poor? Uh, why why are we here? How did we get here? And these are wonderful questions that will expand your mind. Um, but ultimately, there is no certain answer. So every child will ask themselves these questions, and we as adults or this culture that we live in will provide answers, but those answers are not true. They're our best to guess depending on the level of science and knowledge that we have available. So, when we accept that there is a massive amount of uncertainty in life and there are many things we don't understand, there are a couple of ways that we as humans can respond to that. We like certainty. We like simple answers to a thing. So you can take a very complicated question, such as why are we here? And some people want a simple, straightforward answer. And a simple answer might be because God created us. All right. Now, when you pick that apart, there's all sorts of problems there. Who created God? Has God always been around? What is the nature of God? But for some people, that's a satisfactory answer. Some people will look further and deeper. And there are many conclusions you might draw. You might convince yourself that there is a God and that all evidence points to that God. You might convince yourself, well, I don't see why we would need a God for this process. These could just be natural processes that come about from the nature of flows of energy. If you believe in the Big Bang, when everything was a very dense little bundle of energy that expanded, and you got energy flows from hot to cold, or um, positive to negative, or whatever. These flows cause motion and structure, and I won't go into too much, but you can basically build up a picture of how life could potentially have developed under those circumstances. We don't know for sure how life developed on this planet, but we've kind of got some mechanisms when we understand chemistry and physics and biology of how you can go from a chemical reaction that then builds up complex molecules that then harvest the energy around them and build up more complex molecules, and then when you at some point you somehow get a single cell organism, and then it becomes multicellular, and then it gets more and more and more complicated, gets more and more efficient at harvesting the energy around it that's provided by the sun and geothermal activity and stuff. And you can build up a reasonable mechanism of how we could get to where we are now from this starting point without really needing a God. So that's why I'm an atheist, because I don't see that God needs to be part of that equation. I can't prove God doesn't exist, but I do like the principle of Occam's razor. You go for the simplest explanation of any question. That's not to say that evolution, for example, is a simple answer, but to me, it's a simpler answer than some very abstract. I mean, let's take the Christian God. If you look at the way he is supposed to have structured the world, there's a lot of questions there. There's all the things that just don't really make sense. He doesn't seem particularly loving or particularly have really, the plan doesn't quite make sense for me. And you could say, oh, well, we are just mere mortals, we cannot comprehend. But that's a cop out, because we do have brains and we should use them and we should seek to answer these questions. And any time you say, "Oh, this knowledge is beyond us," you're so what exactly is your brain for? If you can conceive the question, then you can work at finding an answer. There may be no ultimate answer, but it's all about the process. It's like use it or lose it. If you've got a brain that's capable of philosophizing and you don't use it to philosophize, then you are wasting that brain. Not to say we should spend every moment of our lives philosophizing, but we have the potential to do it. And as soon as you say, oh, I'm not capable of trying to answer that question, you are doing yourself a disservice, and you're doing a disservice to everyone who has tried to help you in your life to become a better person. So yeah, So why do we have religion? So going back to what I was saying, to me it is um, a substitute for knowledge. Bless you. Um, so when we don't understand how something works, we make something up. If a child asks their parents, um, why is the sky blue? And the parents might not know, so they might make something up, because most of us have an ego and we don't like to admit we don't know the answer to something. So they might say, oh, because it's reflecting the blue water of the sea, or they might say it's to do with the refraction of the sun, um, or whatever. And there are degrees of truth to those different answers. They may say because God made it blue, and that's what He decided it should be. Yeah. So, and some of those answers are better than others because some of them attempt to use our most recent scientific knowledge of how the world works. So, I believe that the origin of religion or religious dogma is the best knowledge people had at the time. So I just throw this out as an example. I'm by no means an expert in religion, but I have my opinions. So, for example, why do Jewish people not eat pork? They don't eat pigs. Seems to me that at the time that their scriptures were being written, pig was an unsafe meat to eat because it had many parasites, and they didn't have the food hygiene standards, and they were in a humid part of the world. So if you ate pig, it might be tasty, but it might be quite bad for your health. So you have this group of people, and the elders of the tribe have realized that although there is a tasty food available, there is a connection between eating this and falling sick. They don't really understand why, but their experiences, they've formed this connection. So one of the younger members of the tribe says, oh, well, there's some delicious pigs here. Why can't we eat them? And the elder doesn't want to explain that in his lifetime of experience, he's, made this connection. Anecdotally, he's realized that people who eat pig are more likely to fall sick. And that might not be a very satisfactory answer. So he says, God has decreed we do not eat this food. And that's great. And then, as a result of this proclamation from the elders, the tribe would prosper and be healthier, and would reproduce more successfully and be economically more efficient. And so those ideas would then get passed on through the generations because they worked. Okay, so at that time, that idea worked and was beneficial and got passed on. Now today, in the Western world, food hygiene is pretty good, and you may have many reasons for not eating pig. You may think you may be a vegetarian for ethical or health reasons. I'm not going to talk about that. That's your personal choice. But parasites are not a major health risk. And I would argue that one of the main reasons for why that law might have become a holy law is no longer relevant. So by all means, you can eat whatever you want. If you don't like pig, or you think it's immoral to eat pig or whatever, that's entirely your choice. But I would argue that something that's been passed through thousands of years of that culture has lost some of its original functional purpose. And I could give all sorts of examples from religion where this might be true, or where the way people behaved made sense in that culture at that time, but is no longer a primary concern. So my point is that I believe some of the ideas that have been passed through the long-standing religions were the best knowledge, the best scientific knowledge they had at the time, because that's what that elder or that group of elders was doing. They were using their scientific observation that eating this particular food type was bad for you. They didn't have a more detailed understanding of why, but they had observational evidence that it was the case. So I consider that science because it was testable, it was based on evidence, and it was the best science of the time. But it's not the best science of our time. So when we look at some of the ideas that get passed through traditions and through religions, it's a choice. Follow whatever works for you, but understand that the circumstances that made it good science at the time do not necessarily make it good science today. Yeah. So if you look at religions today, they are still very much filling the gaps in our knowledge. And as human knowledge increases, the gaps diminish. But there will always be unanswered questions. There are still plenty of questions in physics today of things we don't understand. And you could sort of almost have a religious you could take them as religious dogma almost. I mean, I'll just throw one out there. So it's generally accepted under sort of Einsteinian theory that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. And all evidence at the moment backs that up. So it's pretty much accepted to be true. But who's to say that at some point in the future we might find some exceptions to that rule? And then the scientists will adapt their theories and we'll move on. But some people may not be able to move on, and I'm sure that will be a difficult transition. I don't know. I don't know if that's a fixed law of nature that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, or not. I don't know that, but time will tell. So I guess, yeah, that's one of my takes on religion. It's a huge subject, a fascinating subject. I love it. I love studying different religions and finding the similarities. And clearly, you don't have to be religious to be moral. I consider myself to have certain codes of behavior, but they're not based on some higher power that's handed them down to me. They're basically just what works. Like, you don't go around killing people because their friends and family don't like it and will probably try to kill you, or prevent you from doing that. So that types of antisocial behavior will society will try and stop you. So a lot of sort of the moral codes that have been transmitted through religion, they're just what works in society. They're what stops society from collapsing. But clearly, you can have society without religion. You need a code of behavior, and if you want to take your code of ethics and behavior and try and reinforce it with the idea of some divine judgment, okay, I can understand why you might try and do that, because obviously, in reality, laws are not always enforceable. In reality, some people do commit crimes, and maybe if you can scare them with the threat of eternal damnation, maybe that will stop some people being naughty. I'm not convinced myself. I don't think it's the most effective way of getting people to behave themselves. But Yeah, maybe it does work for some people. I think a lot of our moral behavior is based on fear of punishment or fear of repercussions, and that might just be being told off, or social alienation. That's a very powerful force. We are social animals, and uh, we seek approval of the people we care about, of our family and friends and stuff. So that does regulate our behavior. Uh, but I don't think you need a god there. I don't think it's important. I mean, I'm a humanist, so I believe in the steady progress of the human race to continually better itself, continually learning more about our environment, and continually learning how to cooperate more effectively with each other. Um, and I think those objectives, you do need common acceptance of of group behavior, but I don't think you need a god. Personally, I can see why, for some people, why that would be helpful. And for me, I suppose I do have a sense of humanity, like the greater good, and um, yeah, that I am just a very small piece of a greater whole, and I am there to serve that greater whole. So, if you like, you could call that a religion of sorts. But I don't think there's any like central kind of entity that's judging us. I think it's just the group mind and the amalgamation of every person in the human race that makes it the sum of all those parts. Um, yeah, and for some people that might be their spirituality, that they believe in some collective subconsciousness or something. I think those ideas are interesting. Um, and I guess my last point is, I don't actually think it matters what you believe. I think it matters what you do. Um, and are you striving to, obviously you have to look after your own interests, but you also are part of something bigger than yourself, um, and you have to make some sacrifices for that. Uh, so if believing in a god or angels or ghosts or whatever helps you um, overcome your own selfish impulses and see the bigger picture, then great, brilliant, whatever works. But that's what's important. We are selfish animals that are capable of empathy and uh, seeing the long-term big picture, but that's difficult. Most people spend most of the time looking at what's in front of them, dealing with the here and now, and are driven by their own personal goals and by their own selfish motivations. That's fine, uh, but you need balance, and sometimes you do need to look at the bigger picture. Okay, enough rambling for now. Thank you if you made it this far. See you next time.